Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, is it safe to come out now? Stock futures are pointing to a strongly higher open after closing well off of their lows for the day yesterday. The market's open for real in 2.5 hours. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu talked trade with President Trump at the White House, but more importantly, he was there to support the White House's new direct nuclear talks with Iran. The House GOP caucus logjam is over thanks to a deal on proxy voting for parents. Now, Speaker Johnson and the Republicans can at least try to advance more of the Trump agenda. Chief Justice John Roberts and the Supreme Court decide not to force the Trump administration to return a mistakenly deported illegal alien back to the U.S. They also handed the Trump administration another victory. For now, the High Court wants more time to issue clearer rulings. And is this any way to fight the oligarchy? Congresswoman AOC is caught taking first class to one of her Eat the Rich rallies with Bernie Sanders. Gee, I'm starting to think she may not be so genuine after all. Here's something that's genuine. American Sunrise Early Edition starts right now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. If you're a stockbroker and you're about to jump out the window, close that window, step back. Looks like we're going to have at least a strong open this morning. That's the lead story that you're not going to hear almost anywhere else, by the way. Doesn't mean that the bleeding's over, but it's stopped for now. And so that's one thing to talk about. We got a lot to talk about with Eduardo Naret, our first guest. He is the author of the Naret Files. He's also a political commentator. He's also a political strategist, GOP strategist, and he is a proud alum of the University of Florida. Welcome to Eduardo. Congratulations on your national championship. Congratulations. I know you had a lot to do with it. You were strategizing some of those plays, some of that defense. But all kidding aside, hey, there's other good news this morning. It's possible that the worst is over as the sell-off on Wall Street is at least taking a big pause today. Last I checked, looks like we're going to gain 747 points on the Dow as we open. We'll see if that holds up over the next 2.5 hours. But yesterday was also positive. We were down 1,700 points at one point. We only closed down 300 points on the Dow, and the NASDAQ actually closed up. So let me ask you a question, Eduardo. Wouldn't it be worth it? Let's say this 15% or so loss on the markets that we've seen in the last few days is the worst of it. Is that really too big a price to pay to try to get our economy on better footing for the rest of America? I don't think so.
No, and not if all of these countries do end up coming to the table. The reports that, the Japanese are talking to Scott Bessent. The Europeans offered 0-for-0 trade. I'm hoping Trump can bring all these countries together. And, someone put forth this idea online of having a Bretton Woods 2.0 at Mar-a-Lago. You can call it the Mar-a-Lago Summit, where we reset the global monetary and fiscal international order. So we'll have to see if those things happen. But let's take a step back and look at the reaction over the last couple of days. We've seen CNBC, the media, Wall Street freaking out, screaming over this slide we've seen the last couple of days. But the reality that none of these people, none of these groups have wanted to point out is the reality is most Americans don't care about what has happened in Wall Street over the last couple of days, what has happened in the stock market. The reason for that is because the bottom 50% of Americans in terms of wealth in this country own 1% of the stock market. The top 10%, the uber wealthy, the billionaires, these hedge fund, private equity guys, They own 93%. And so I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't care, but that's just the reality. If these guys think that they're going to get some tears from Main Street, from middle America, I mean, think again. These are people who can barely afford their own bills from week to week, people who struggle with the high grocery and gas prices under Biden, people whose wages have barely increased over the last couple of decades. And so they simply don't care about the day-to-day movements of the stock market. And the media can talk about it all they want, but they are not going to find any sympathy from middle-class Americans. And the reason for that, too, I think another thing we can look at is these uber wealthy, these Wall Street guys. These are the same group of people that had no problem shutting down the economy, destroying small businesses, changing supply chains, keeping our kids home and setting them back in terms of education for years. They had no problem doing that at all for a virus that most healthy people would have survived from with COVID a few years ago. They did that. And so, again, I'm not saying we shouldn't pay attention to the stock market. I do think there is another segment of Americans in there that is affected by this. People like you and me, I think you can even split that into two categories. There's people who are 20, 30 years away from retirement, people like myself who, frankly, shouldn't be talking at all, shouldn't be whining about anything that's going on. If you're not looking to sell over the next year or so, you shouldn't be saying anything. And then, of course, there is a smaller segment of individuals, retirees, people who are close to retirement, who I think we should show a little concern for. But largely speaking, Americans aren't paying attention to this the way the media is. And so will that change if this goes on for months and months? Could we see the American public and the public polling change on Trump's tariffs policy? Maybe. But I think for now, the president has the popularity of his supporters behind him. He could do this for several weeks before we would see anything change. And I'm hoping you're right that we'll see a bounce back sooner than expected.
Yeah, listen, if you're someone who's about to retire and you had a financial advisor who didn't tell you to get into bonds about 10 years before you retired, or at least 5 years, I don't know what to tell you. But if you did do that, you made out pretty well the last few days. And also, alluding to a little bit of what you just said, something I wrote last night, I don't know why anyone who hasn't spent at least one night in blue-collar America is even talking right now. Just don't. It's not a good look. All right. Speaking of people who are talking and said the right things, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came back to the White House for a very short turnaround, by the way. He was just here for a visit with President Trump. Now, yes, they signed a new trade deal. Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu said all the right things about trade, getting rid of any kind of trade barriers between the two countries. That was really nice. It was almost like it was written by the Trump people. It was really strong. That was nice. But it does seem like the biggest reason why he was there, in my opinion, was to back the U.S., because we've learned over the last couple of days that the U.S. is in direct talks with nobody else involved with the Iranians to try to get them to make some kind of deal on their nuclear program. And for Israel's prime minister to stand there with President Trump and basically support that, that's great news for all of us who don't want to see conflict, certainly not with American troops. I think that was a really strong message of partnership. Forget the trade stuff, because Israel and the United States don't have a huge amount of trade anyway, but they kind of do for Israel, from Israel's side, not from our side. So I thought that was really the biggest reason for that visit, Eduardo.
I think it says a lot. I mean, there's a lot of chatter in the political class. There's the neocon versus isolationist debates we've seen over the last couple of years. And there has been that concern that whether from certain perspectives here in the United States or certain perspectives in Israel, there is going to be a push for direct military involvement with Iran. So as you said, the fact that we're seeing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stand there with Trump as Trump announces he's going to engage in talks with the Iranians is a good sign. It's a good thing to see. Nobody wants military conflict with Iran. I think most people in the United States don't, besides the select certain elite in Washington. And when you look at even if you take that type of hypothetical conflict in a vacuum, it's difficult to see. And even though we could successfully strike Iran when we wanted to, we could do that to most countries. If you look at it in the context of what is going on around the rest of the world, what's going on in our country, it's just hard for me to see how, amidst a trade war, amidst a time when we want our leaders to be negotiating these new trade deals, when you don't have the war in Ukraine resolved, when you don't have the war in Gaza resolved, why you would want to take on another conflict like this. I just don't see it. You would have to ask yourself how doing that amidst everything else going on benefits the Americans and the American people. And I really can't find a lot of reasons why that would be a good thing for our country. So I'm hoping the president can engage with them and get some sort of deal. We're hearing that they're days away from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And frankly, that's something I've heard for most of my adult life. So look, I certainly think we have the capability to stop them from obtaining one or even using one. And so I'm hoping that can be done peacefully, and that with the support of Israel, of course.
Yeah, let's hear because this is important. We're in these direct talks, which I think is a good thing, especially since because they have the backing up of a strong leader. Here's what I mean, Eduardo. This is what President Trump had to say about what's backing up these talks and will make them hopefully more urgent for the Iranians. Listen to this.
Is the United States, under your leadership, ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So
Can't have it. Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it. But I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that, too, as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks are successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case.
Okay, I think part of the biggest news of that soundbite is that chucklehead who stood in front of the camera at the end there. You're not supposed to do that. But other than that, this is what I'm talking about. I think we both want to see talks. We don't want to see conflict. But this has got to be the kind of talks that a Trump administration can put together with some teeth behind them. You know, I mean, we can all say we don't want conflict. We didn't want conflict in all these places. But when you had a Joe Biden in there, there was absolutely no pushback. So you got to have a little bit of strength. So I'm urging the folks who don't want any conflict with Iran, and I'm one of them, to not be frightened by Trump's wording right there, because you got to have that. I'm sorry. You can't just sit down and say, hey, be nice.
No, it's remarkable. I mean, it's so refreshing to have a leader who's going to go in there who isn't really afraid to kind of whip out our strongest card on the table to remind the rest of the world, to remind Iran in front of the cameras, look, if you don't really play along here, this is what we can do to you. They don't need him to say that. They know what the United States is capable of, but it's the difference. You could have a guy like Joe Biden. You could have a guy like Obama go out there and say, well, we want to engage in talks. We don't want them to obtain a nuclear weapon. In fact, the two of them both said that. And yet them saying that invited conflict. It invited Iran and its proxies to act up and act out over the last decade. And we saw that. Why? Well, because they weren't afraid of certain messengers, right? So right now we have someone in the White House in Donald Trump who is tough. That's why you see leaders all around the world, forget the issue of Iran, but you see leaders all around the world coming to the table on issues that Trump wants resolved. Maybe behind the scenes, they don't really want to deal with him, but they know they have to, because they know he means what he says, and he's not going to throw out empty threats out there. We have a president who is respected. We have a country now that is respected around the world, and our leaders are going to be respected too. And that's going to open so many doors. And I think it can here too.
Yeah, I only have about 30 seconds left, but I saw something that you posted on your X feed. A lot of us posted this story about the U.S. American tourist woman who's on trial in Germany right now for stabbing a migrant from Eritrea who was sexually assaulting her. And, we can say, oh, look at those crazy Europeans. But, I got to tell you, it is not much of a stretch. I feel like we're going to have a trial like that in this country soon in a blue city. I hope not, but you probably agree with me. We're darn close to doing the same stupid thing, aren't we?
The fall of Europe can be defined by this story, where you have the German government citing and prioritizing the needs and the rights of an African migrant over an American tourist. And forget the fact she's American. She was actually born in Germany. So in a way, you could frame this as over the rights of their own people, right? Over the rights of a German. And that is what has happened across Europe for the last several decades. Europe is destroying itself. Sadly, I think in many ways it's too late, but they're a society that has destroyed themselves with migration and now will allow their own people within their own country, to be sexually assaulted. And when those people defend themselves, they take the side of the migrant and prosecute the actual victim, which are the women and those victims of migrant crime. It's sad to see. It's enraging also in many ways. Anyone who's been to Europe knows what a beautiful part of our shared Western civilization it has been. And sadly, that's changing.
Yeah. Let's hope we can put a tariff on that kind of stupidity. Hey, Eduardo, the futures went up a couple more points while we were talking, so you're good luck for the markets. You'll have to stay on for the next 6 hours.
I think so.
Kidding, but thank you so much for joining us. Thanks very much for joining us. And again, congratulations on the Gators winning the national championship. Can't believe my first guest was an alum. How did that work out? That was awesome. Thanks, Eduardo.
Thanks so much, Jake.
All right, coming up, some new developments in the fight to get real justice against those who engineered the outrageous lawfare against President Trump. We'll have the update. And do you think it couldn't get any worse for now former interim Columbia University President Katrina Armstrong? You thought wrong. American Sunrise Early Edition is coming right back. Beautiful shot, live shot of St. Louis there in the Gateway Arch. The downtown St. Louis scene is getting a little better, but it's for a long time it was kind of dormant. Interesting city in America. It used to be a much bigger and more powerful industrial city, trying to adjust. But the Cardinals are a fun team to watch, although they've been on a downturn lately. All right, welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble, watching on those platforms and commenting. Again, this is not a passive program. Hey, here's a question. Will anyone on the Biden team pay the price for engineering the illegal and really dangerous lawfare against President Donald Trump when Biden was president? Well, Judicial Watch's Tom Fitton had this update on that for Steve Bannon's War Room.
This gets back to the unitary executive theory. I love the fact you're saying announce a special counsel. That special counsel reports directly to the President of the United States and is run out of the West Wing. Okay, this puts to rest the third part. As he's a chief executive officer. We're in court fighting. Can he cut personnel? Can he cut budgets? Can he impound money? The commander in chief. They're in court right now with Boasberg, trying to interfere with him being commander in chief. This is the third leg of the stool, which is being chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer. You take care of all that by setting up a special counsel, having directly report to the office of the president, and set it up in the West Wing. And what would be the mandate for that special counsel, Tom Fitton?
Start running a grand jury in Fort Pierce, investigating the deprivation, the deprivation of his civil rights, the civil rights of other Americans under color of law, the seeming conspiracy with the Justice Department and the state actors in Fulton County, New York, et cetera, to target Trump, not because they violated law, to target party leaders in the Republican Party, activists, not because they violated the law, but in retaliation for their First Amendment protected rights. That's a crime, potentially. And people need to be at least asked questions about what went on. I'm not even... this is not a question of a prosecution yesterday. This is a question, are they even asking anyone questions? President Trump's a crime victim. Are they investigating our crimes against him? I'm not seeing any indication that there is. And, Dan's been putting out some tweets talking about how there are things that are happening behind the scenes he can't talk about. Just because it's not readily apparent doesn't mean it's not happening. Well, that may be true on certain law enforcement areas, certainly on national security, but it's not true on these types of crimes. If there was a serious criminal investigation into what happened against Trump, we'd know all about it. And the fact that we're not hearing anything about it is a good indication as DC gets. Nothing's happening.
We'll keep you updated. Steve Bannon's War Room airs every Monday through Friday here on Real America's Voice at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, there's a concept known as plausible deniability. And now, former Columbia University interim president Katrina Armstrong, she doesn't have it. We just learned that in a legal deposition, Armstrong told lawyers for the Justice Department that she couldn't recall students calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. Really? I heard it a million times. Nor could she recall hearing of allegations that students spit on their Jewish counterparts. I saw a video of that. Or that a member of the faculty had, in class, described Jewish donors to Columbia as, quote, wealthy white capitalists who laundered blood money. Now, we all heard this, but she didn't. No, she hears no evil, and no honest person believes her at all. But there's another thing that no one believes, and this is something that really gets to the core of the matter at these universities. If the students on campus had been black, Latino, gay, trans, whatever, or even illegal aliens, we all know that Columbia and Harvard and Penn and all those schools would have cracked down on the protesters on day one, before the end of day one. We know this. Please stop insulting our intelligence. Please stop pretending that these things aren't happening and pretending that you didn't know about it. Doesn't mean that you have to kill free speech entirely. You can come up with a lot of accommodations, but stop lying to us about it. That is why she is the former interim president of Columbia right now, and that it's obvious she doesn't have intellectual honesty, and she's in an intellectual institution. Really, really shameless. All right, coming up, a major boost for Medicare from the Trump administration that you probably didn't hear about yesterday, but I'll tell you about it. And calling all Corvette lovers, Chevy is opening up the process for new concept designs for the vets of the future. I'll show you what one official GM design came up with when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Live shot of the Capitol Dome there in Washington, D.C. Kind of a dark morning there right now so far, but it is a bright morning for those of you who are looking to see the stock market stop their bleeding. Let's take a look at where the markets are going to open. Look at all those green. Now, this is what I call a Goldilocks chart, because not only is the Dow going to open, at least it opened right now, up more than 700 points, but look at gold, which barely lost any value at all during the sell-off of the last several days. Still over the $3,000 per ounce mark. And look what it's at this morning, up another 1.8%. So that's nice. And crude oil only up 8 cents at the $60 a barrel level, $10 less than it was just a couple of weeks ago, maybe less than that. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Let's see if they're bouncing back as well, the cryptocurrencies. And the answer is yes. Still below 80,000, though. They've got a long way to go. but crypto coming back today to the tune of about 1.5%. All right, here's an interesting result of the tariff policies. Apple is reportedly working hard to move more of its production out of China and to India. Now, that tells you a lot. It tells you that, first of all, Apple knows that China is going to be probably the last country to end its tariff back and forth battle with the United States. In other words, they'll be the last ones to get the tariff restrictions on them removed, if that ever happens. So India, which is also dealing with some tariff and free trade stuff with the United States, but is in a much better place, is a better place for Apple to make its equipment. But this also tells you something else. You know, Apple's been losing market share in China like crazy, especially over the last year. Huawei, that other phone maker out there, has been taking over market share. It now outsells Apple in China. I think, and a lot of other people like me think, that that's because Huawei basically stole all of Apple's technology. That's what the Chinese do. But hey, that's another reason to get the heck out of there. If they ever have any new innovations, at least they won't be able to steal it from around the corner. All right. Do you know any low information elderly voters who were duped or maybe paid to go out to those hands-off protests over the weekend? You might have heard them talking about how they thought President Trump was going to hurt Social Security and cut Medicare. Well, almost none of them are going to hear this news. It turns out late yesterday, the Trump administration radically boosted the reimbursement levels for private Medicare plans. In other words, those Medicare Advantage plans that private insurers back up by more than double what the administration was hinting they would reimburse them by, even in January. They're going to get reimbursed 5.1% increase. So instead of cutting Medicare like these scare tactic liars, there's no other way to say it, have been saying, this administration has boosted it a lot more than the previous administration did and more than was expected even just 3 months ago. If you're going out to protest, at least know what you're talking about. That's all I ask. All right, getting back to trade. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I alluded to this in the last segment. He came to the White House to talk trade. It was really about Iran, but he also talked trade. And I really think it's important for everyone to listen to the way that Netanyahu talked about getting rid of all trade barriers between the United States and Israel. It was pretty interesting verbiage, as they say. Check it out.
First, if I can mention tariffs, the subject of some interest to him. I can tell you that I said to the president a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, you know, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And you know, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs.
That's awesome. But, you know, we should note that 90% of the trade deficit between the United States and Israel are Gal Gadot bikini pictures from Wonder Woman, and I'm in favor of that. So anyway, just kidding. That's interesting verbiage there from Prime Minister Netanyahu. Okay, let's hit the perfect road. Okay, let's start with a look at how those big U.S. automaker stocks are doing. Got to tell you the bad news first. Let's go from the biggest to the smallest. GM shares fell 1.4% yesterday, but they are now up 1% in the pre-market. Ford fell almost 4% yesterday, but it is also up about 1% in the pre-market. Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge parent Stellantis lost almost 5% yesterday. Again, also you can see the pattern here, also up 1% in the pre-market. And Tesla, which makes the most American-made cars these days, lost about 3% yesterday, but is actually up 3% in the pre-market now. It looks like all the auto shares, all the companies, all the stocks in American auto companies are going to be up today. All right. How do you say "me too" in Japanese? Honda's number 2 executive, Shinji Aoyama, has abruptly resigned amid an allegation of inappropriate conduct at an after-work social gathering. Now, usually they just say inappropriate conduct. Now you got me thinking, did they go to Hooters? Did they go to a sports bar? I don't know what happened there, but that's kind of a cool story. Ioma joined Honda in 1986. He actually had a really great career. I feel sorry for this guy, although maybe he deserved it. He was once the head of all Honda operations here in North America, so got a lot of experience here in the U.S. By the way, Honda shares actually closed up 1.3% yesterday, and they too are up another 1% in the pre-market, but their number 2 guy is gone. I hope that party was worth it for this guy. All right. Hey, I love hearing my favorite songs in the car. Who doesn't? But Cadillac is really kicking that up a notch right now. Starting with the 2025 Optic Compact SUV that you see right here, all Cadillac EVs will now offer the Dolby Atmos system that is now used in more than 1,200 recording studios and 8,000 theaters around the world. That is really high end. It sounds good, but you know that some dopes on the road next to you are just going to be cranking up the volume, and all you're going to hear is the bass going boom, boom. You're not going to hear the music. Anyway, and also their batteries are going to go dead real fast. But hey, good times, everybody. What will the next generation Corvette look like, you ask? Well, here's a check on that. These are the pics of potential new designs for the Vette from GM's new official design studios in Great Britain, which I have a problem with. Why is the Corvette design studio in Great Britain? All right, that's another story. But anyway, this proposed Corvette that you see here pairs a low-slung body with a classic design, like a split rear windshield. Kind of cool. More concepts, hopefully from places here in the United States, will be unveiled as the year goes on, because GM is asking for people's ideas. One thing I don't like about this design you're looking at right now, it doesn't have a V8 engine. What are they doing? I don't get it. All right. The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and with April 15th fast approaching, it's being more aggressive than ever. In 2025, enforcement has ramped up. And if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, waiting is not an option. The longer you do, the worse it gets. Ignoring your tax troubles is the worst thing you can do. April 15th marks another tax year that has passed you by. Getting ahead of this now is the smartest route. But never contact the IRS alone. Instead, let the experts at Tax Network USA handle it for you. Why? Because not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, meaning they know exactly which agents to deal with and which to avoid. With proven strategies to settle tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators have already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters. Stop looking over your shoulder and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. April 15th is just around the corner. Act now before the IRS acts first. Coming up, President Trump isn't backing down on tariffs, but will Wall Street keep pushing back on him? We'll take one more look at the futures to see what to expect when trading opens in about 2 hours. American Sunrise Early Edition continues in just a moment. Tuesday, April 8th. Here are some of this morning's top stories. Is it safe to come out now? Stock futures are pointing to a strongly higher open after closing well off their lows for the day yesterday. The markets open for real in 2 hours. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu talked trade with President Trump at the White House, but more importantly, he was there to support the White House's new direct nuclear talks with Iran. Chief Justice John Roberts and the Supreme Court decide not to force the Trump administration to return a mistakenly deported illegal alien back to the U.S. They also hand the Trump administration the ability to continue to use the Alien Enemies Law. And they're waiting for a more clear ruling as time goes on. And is this any way to fight the oligarchy? Congresswoman AOC was on her way to this rally with Bernie Sanders, but they caught her doing it in first class. That's not the way to do these things. Gee, I'm starting to think that she may not be so genuine after all. Here's something that is genuine. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Wondering if we have our guest Jennifer Kelly. I don't think so. We're talking about some of the big stories today. So first, I want to talk about the first one. First of all, let's take a look one more time at those futures on Wall Street, because this has become the top story. I promise you I'm not morphing into a business show, even though I worked at CNBC and Fox Business for a lot of years. I promise. Don't worry about that. But that, of course, has become the number one story in America for the last several years. Days, I should say. Feels like years, right? We are almost 800 points up on the Dow futures as we speak. That's more than a 2% gain. A long way to go. We've lost something like between 10 to 15% on the Dow the last few days. But still, that's a big deal. And also I ask you to look at gold here for a second, because we didn't lose much on gold. Gold hit that $3,000 per ounce level just a couple of weeks ago, really not that long ago, less than a couple of weeks ago. And it held that value, still at that 3,000 mark, and it's up again today. So that's interesting. And my favorite thing may be here that even though things are going up this morning, we still have crude oil at the $60 a barrel level. Remember, just last week or so, we hit the $70 a barrel level. That's a big drop. We should see some relief at the gas pump. So now let's take a look at the Bitcoin situation, the cryptocurrency situation, because that is a little bit different. That's actually also up this morning. It may not show up on the chart, but we ended up, oh, there it is. We got $79,000 on Bitcoin. Now, remember, we were at something like $113,000 on Bitcoin at the end of last year. We've got a long way to go. That's still a big jump from where we were a year ago today, however, and up $1,400, up $1,500 right now in that trade. All right. Hey, this is something that everyone should understand now about the markets. Look, the markets are still way up from where they were just a couple of years ago, despite this big sell-off the last couple of days. So that's one issue. Second issue is, and this is something I say a lot, I am not pretending to have been a blue-collar worker. Don't anyone confuse me with that. I'm not pretending to have been. However, I did work and live in blue-collar cities that have been devastated by the economic downturn in this country over the last, actually, it's 70 years. A lot of people think, oh, this started in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. Nope. It started really in the late 1940s when a lot of our GIs came back from World War II and there weren't as many manufacturing jobs as when they left. And they left during the Great Depression, pretty much, right? So this has been going on for a long time. And it's not just a little bit of money off the table. It's not just that fact that the people in the middle of the country maybe have a smaller house or a less fancy car. If that were the case, that would be one thing. It's that these entire towns and ways of life have been destroyed. You don't have the fentanyl or opioid crisis having as much of an effect as it did without decades of economic devastation also happening. This is why it's important for anyone who has never at least worked in or slept for one night in a blue-collar town not to talk right now. Not just because the markets are up today and maybe the bleeding has stopped, but because if you are a career white-collar worker who's only had to deal with the financial industry and which has done very well with this trade situation, you really shouldn't be talking. It's a bad look. I'm looking at you, Bill Ackman. Thank you for your support for common sense during the 2024 election, but you are not someone who should be talking right now. Even if you were praising the tariff policies, you shouldn't be talking right now. You have no idea what blue-collar America is about. You've never had to deal with that. You've never had to live with it. Don't talk right now. Same is true for Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Again, thank you for your support for common sense policies coming out of the Trump administration the last year or so. But this is not the time for you to talk. Again, I'm not a blue-collar worker, but I spent many years of my life living in that part of the country. I saw what kind of devastation those people lived with. I worked alongside them, even though they were the blue-collar worker and I was the white-collar worker at some of the places where I worked, but I learned a lesson. Bill Ackman and Jamie Dimon can't say that. They never will be able to say that, which is why they shouldn't talk. Even if they were supporting President Trump and the tariffs, they shouldn't talk. It's a bad look. Again, just my advice. All right. I want to talk about the border right now because we had another development in that story, which is really a big win for the Trump administration, and yet another story that the mainstream news media is not going to do clearly today. By the way, they're not going to get excited about the stock market opening up stronger this morning either. You got to come to Real America's Voice and these American Sunrise programs to wake up right and get your story straight. Anyway, the Supreme Court did two things yesterday very helpful to the Trump administration. First off, they said the Trump administration does not have to go and look for that guy, that he's still an illegal alien, who they deported to El Salvador. And the reason is very simple. First of all, they want to get a more clearer understanding of how to deal with these kinds of mistakes that are going to happen. But second of all, if every single person who's deported, who's an illegal alien, but should have been deported elsewhere or should have had their timeline different, is able to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, then the function of the whole border policy isn't going to work. Now, there was another victory for the Trump administration yesterday from the Supreme Court, from John Roberts and that rest of the group on the Supreme Court. They said that the Trump administration, at least for now, can continue to use that 18th century alien enemies law as a pretext to arrest and deport dangerous illegal aliens. This is a very big win for the Trump administration. The decision was basically 5-4, but I shouldn't call it a decision. It wasn't one of those decisions where they write it out and they explain it explicitly because they want to get a more full ruling a little bit later on. Still, this was a 5-4 decision with Amy Coney Barrett, as many people might have expected, going a different way. Hey, we do have Jennifer Kelly right now. She is a nationally syndicated radio host. I'm so glad we got her up. Technology was working against us this morning, but now it's with us. It's kind of like the resilient stock market. Jennifer, hey, we're looking at a possibly really strong open on the stock market today. Does that mean that everyone at CNN could stop telling everyone to jump out a window? What do you think?
Nobody tell Jim Cramer. I think he's on suicide watch this morning. Look, I had to laugh. Jim Cramer at the closing bell on Friday said, well, we were going to have a Black Monday situation. And I looked at the stock market yesterday at 4 p.m. and it was only down 76 points. So oops, another Jim Cramer prediction gone wrong over there at CNBC. Look, the naysayers are going to find out what all of us know about Donald Trump is that he is the master negotiator. He is the creator of the art of the deal. This is why you never underestimate Donald Trump. And look, I've been critical of him at times, if he deserved to be, critical. But look, this tariff story is going to have a happy ending for the American people, for small businesses, for people in manufacturing states, for the American worker. Remember, those people that 25 years ago, George W. Bush said, gosh, those Americans who don't want those jobs. Well, it turns out we want all the jobs. We do. That's how American capitalism works. And the small business owners I've been talking to across the country, they are thrilled about this and the return of, America First policies. And look, we had the EU last night, pretty much most of Europe coming to the table last night. Saying they will go down to zero tariffs for us. We have, other countries phoning into the White House. In fact, President Trump shared that every single country now has responded to the tariffs. And so this is where the long game comes into play. And I believe President Trump will end up being the victor. There was an interesting poll also, Jake, a couple of weeks ago that showed that the American people are more sophisticated than Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and all those folks give them credit for on these tariffs and these goods and services issues. A Reuters Ipsos poll, right? So no conservative think tank there. Reuters Ipsos actually said yes, that about 70% of the American people had some nervousness over the tariffs issue, but 41% of those, so over half of those, said that they understood there would be some short-term pain for some long-term gain on tariffs, and they said they were willing to ride it out. So that tells me the American voter is a lot more sophisticated than the left gives them credit for.
Yeah, and besides Jim Cramer and Jennifer Kelly, the song from Steely Dan is Black Friday. When Black Friday comes. I mean, he didn't even get the day right. I know there was a Black Monday in 1987, but come on. You got to love the Steely Dan reference.
Fox business producer.
Yeah, that's right. I actually used to work with Jim. Well, he was in the next office next to me at CNBC. All right, listen. Hey, Jennifer, I don't want to get into the weeds of Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements. That sounds as boring as it is. But, you know, you had all these elderly people who did those hands-off protests over the weekend. And we had our David Zier and other people go and talk to them. None of them knew what they were doing there. They were all confused. And now we get even more proof of their confusion. Yesterday, you know, they were saying, oh, Trump's going to ruin Medicare. He's going to ruin Social Security. He's going to ruin Medicaid. He's going to hurt the Brooklyn Dodgers. They moved to L.A., by the way, 75 years ago. But anyway, the point is the Trump administration actually increased Medicare Advantage reimbursements yesterday. This is a huge boost, much more than was expected. I don't want to get into the weeds of that, Jennifer, but isn't this yet another example of how these AstroTurf protesters don't even know what the heck they're doing?
Well, they don't know what they're doing. In fact, I've talked to some of them on the ground. They're there because someone paid them $25 and a pack of cigarettes to show up. And that is a direct quote. So that tells you, you know, what the going rate for AstroTurf is these days on the left. Look, this is yet another brilliant move by Donald Trump. This is also, you know, exemplified by his appointing of, you know, Dr. Oz to run Medicare and Medicaid. And these are, you know, this is what happens when you bring the best minds of the country together, right? You have somebody like RFK Jr., who's been ridiculed by the left, but this is a guy who has studied health the last 20 years, lives a healthy life despite, you know, having some health challenges himself. And now you have Dr. Oz in this position of Medicare and Medicaid. And this guy has been a practicing physician, not just a TV physician, but a practicing physician for the better part of 40 plus years. Donald Trump, this is what he does best. He is the ultimate CEO. He brings all these guys together in a room and he says, what can we come up with? And this is what they came up with. And he should be getting credit for this. He probably won't. But I think, well, you know, a year from now, we're going to look back on Donald Trump's, not just his first 100 days in office, but his first year in office. And it's going to be really difficult to find people who are still holdouts on all of the great things he's done, because they're going to be looking at every sector of their household, every piece of their pocketbook. And Donald Trump will have made their lives better in some way, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the price of groceries at the store, whether it's foreign relations, as you're showing him there with Netanyahu. He will have made every American's life better. And I think it's interesting and important to remember this historical perspective. Donald Trump is now in the position that Ronald Reagan was in after he beat Jimmy Carter in 1980. Remember, it took Ronald Reagan from January of 1981, when he was sworn in, until 1983, so a full 2 years to turn the Jimmy Carter economy around. That's how dismal things were, and also to turn the foreign policy around. And I think the similarities between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan are very similar, and how they're responding to things at the White House now are very similar to how Reagan did it. So I think he'll actually beat Reagan's record. I don't think it'll take Donald Trump a full 2 years to get the Joe Biden economy turned around. I think Donald Trump can do it in his first year in office.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, honestly, I hope even people who hate Donald Trump will at least root for the economy to do better. I have people on my Facebook feeds, on my other social media feeds, who are liberals, who are literally rooting the economy down and say they can't wait for the recession. These people need mental health care. Jennifer Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulties at the start. I think those Microsoft people who own Skype are liberals and they're against us. So we'll get you on again real soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, joining us in a moment is the great David Brody. Hey, remember when the Washington Post promised to clean up its editorial board and make its editorials more balanced, or at least more pro-American? How do you think that's going? We're checking receipts when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. That's Atlanta, Georgia here on this Tuesday morning. Was it the Seinfeld episode where he said Tuesday has no feel to it? I think it's got a feel to it. I'm feeling pretty good this morning. Feeling better than I did yesterday. Hey, let's take a look at where stocks are set to open. And I got a little bit of an update. So this says 796 on the Dow. I have a little bit more of an updated number here for you. It's actually up 981 right now. If the market's open right now, we would up 981 points. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. A special welcome to you folks from Getter and Rumble. We got David Brody with us. And hey, listen, you might remember it was several weeks ago, Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, and also the guy who owns the LA Times around the same time, talked about how they're going to clean up their editorial boards. They're going to be more balanced. And the Washington Post got even more specific. They said, we're going to be more pro-American and pro-capitalist. Well, that's not happening. I mean, I've been checking the receipts on this every single day. Here is an editorial today by the editorial board. This isn't by some contributor who they got to balance things out. And they have this editorial this morning, tariffs are freezing the U.S. economy. Now, yes, the tariffs did send the markets down between 10 and 15%. I'll give them that and all that. But freezing the U.S. economy is a stupid, economically ignorant headline. I had no trouble going to the grocery store over the last few days. The economy is moving just fine. The stock market definitely took a hit. But that's an example, David. Not only is that a biased headline, or at least one that's attacking Donald Trump, it's not even factual, and it comes off like someone who has a fifth grade understanding or less of the economy. This is not going well. They are not keeping this promise, David.
They're not. And as I did a quick purview, if you will, of the opinion section in the Washington Post, I lost track after 15 anti-Trump op-eds in a row. I say op-eds, I mean, it's the editorial board. Literally 15. I stopped at that point. I said, okay, I got the point. They haven't changed a bit, Jake. You're absolutely right. A lot of it's on trade. I would say about half, at least half is on trade. So they're clearly going after him on that. And not just because, of the volatility situation. They're literally just disagreeing with everything left, right, and center. Actually, I should really say left of center for sure, far left of center. But here's some good news. It's hard to kind of steer the ship, right, and turn the ship when it's such a huge liberal tanker. And I think we're starting to see some of that, not with these op-eds clearly in the editorial board. That hasn't changed yet. But having said that, Eugene Robinson, right, the longtime op-ed columnist at the Washington Post, he's gone. He left in the last 24 hours. Ruth Marcus is gone. She left. Who was the other one? Jennifer Rubin. So that's three that are gone since Bezos took over. Of course, it's been the last few months that they all left. So you got those three, plus subscriptions are down. The whole thing is starting to crater. I think it's just going to be a slow, kind of steady as she goes, if you will. I think that's what we're talking about here, Jake.
Yeah, well, the best thing to do is just to keep watching Real America's Voice and these American Sunrise programs and everything that comes after it. Don't bother with the Mason News Media. It may be a lost cause, and why should you have to pay for it while you wait for them to get the religion or figure out what they're doing wrong? Good. David Brody and the rest of the crew coming up on American Sunrise the next 2 hours. I'm Jake Novak, and I will see you tomorrow.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
Good morning, gentlemen, on this Monday morning. Okay, we all holding tight for the markets today?
We're hoping that it's going to all come back, and at this point, many people who have invested are invested quite literally and figuratively speaking, and so you just have to hold on.
There's been talk about this could be maybe Black Monday. Hold on, we don't know. What does Black Monday mean? We're talking about 1987 when the stock market came crashing, or 2007, when the stock market came crashing down. They lost over 22% of its value. We'll see. But look, this is bad.
Sums it up. Like, we know what the effects are here, and we can kind of take a pulse of America. But if you go around the world and take their pulse, you'll probably find out they're suffering a little bit more, and they have a little bit more stress level than we have here. But definitely, I think this is going to be a very busy week or so here at the White House as these countries start to really lobby for a lower tariff. But like you said, reciprocal. We charge you, will you charge us?
We should expect that there is going to be continued high inflation in structural items, autos, steel, all of those things. But daily goods are likely to be less impacted than feared.
We're the piggy bank. We have all the advantages.
Forget markets for a second. We have all the advantages. We'll get it straight out. We're going to become a wealthy nation again. Wealthy like never before.
And a lot of these companies, if you really study them, don't make a lot of sense for them to be selling off. So I think the selling is going to start to stop really soon, and we're going to get back to normal trading very, very soon, and the stock prices are going to go higher very, very soon.
Just lay out some of the historical patterns for rough presidential starts when it comes to the stock markets for us.
Well, the blue ribbon has to go to Herbert Hoover. He lost, when the stock market crashed, the first year he lost 30% of the value of the stock market, and over 4 years he lost 70% of its value. So not close behind, but behind is Teddy Roosevelt, then Richard Nixon. They both had really abysmal starts to the stock market.
The Trump-Obama bromance is over.
One of the things that has distinguished us in the past has been this basic idea that we are a rules-based society. That's what happens in other places.
The brothers, as he called them, needed to vote for Kamala Harris. They ignored him. And now I think he is going on a tour, grasping at relevance as the party goes further and further left.
Ahead on American Sunrise, U.S. stock markets are looking to rebound today after global markets, particularly Japan's Nikkei index, see an encouraging spike. We'll keep you updated, and we'll take you to the opening bell on Wall Street in about an hour and a half. Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon planning on introducing legislation to limit President Trump's ability to impose tariffs. Ahead, will the bill gain traction or will it fall flat? And the Supreme Court gives the Trump administration a major win. While the High Court's latest ruling is meant to keep you and your family safe, there are some stipulations. We'll explain those stories and so much more right now on American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning. I'm Allison Hans in for Dr. Gina live from West Palm Beach. Let's bring in David Brody in Washington, D.C. and Terrance Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen.
Lady, gentleman, good morning.
Okay, we have a really full show today. I would say we have a huge show because there are so many topics and so many issues that are happening and so many things that are breaking overnight as well. I'm going to toss it to Terrance right now because I know that you have some stuff that you want to talk about, but choose. No. We have so many.
Right. There are several stories I'm keeping my eye on, specifically the situation involving Iran. President Trump yesterday saying that he plans direct talks with Iran about its nuclear program. That's going to happen on Saturday. But I think the bigger story there, President Trump saying if these talks don't go well, basically Iran is going to be in trouble, that he kind of alluding to the fact that he could potentially attack Iran or there would be some other issues related to that. And kind of, David, overhanging over all of this is that the United States military, particularly the Air Force, has moved about 30% of its B-2 bombers into position to potentially attack Houthi targets, as well as to send a message to Iran. So things are developing in that respect. And so that's a story that I think we're going to be reporting on really for the rest of the week, excuse me, particularly into Sunday or Saturday, excuse me, when those direct talks happen. But of course, we're also keeping an eye on the markets as it relates to the tariffs, David.
Yeah, for sure. As it relates to Iran, what's interesting here is there are a lot of different moving parts. Like you said, there's actually military action moving towards that region. It's already been in that region, but it's moving even more towards that region. So you've got that. You got President Trump's tough talk. And what was interesting to me is that Bibi at the White House yesterday, when it came to Iran, he pretty much sat silent. Some might interpret that as like, well, he doesn't necessarily agree with some of what Trump is trying to do here in terms of negotiating with Iran. I'm not quite sure. To me, my sense is that, you know, Trump maybe looked over at Bibi beforehand, before they entered the Oval, and say, hey, listen, just let me do the talking here. Don't say anything to provoke. Let me work on this. And I think that seems to be interesting as well. Look, Iran is just days away from getting the fuel for one of these nuclear bombs, and they're about a month away from actually getting a nuclear bomb. So look, this is serious stuff. And speaking of serious, Allison, the tariffs, of course, will watch the Dow and the S&P and the NASDAQ and all those alphabet soup letters because, well, the good news is,
so far, so
you know,
good.
as Kermit. Yeah, Kermit is happy. Kermit, it's not easy being green, but today it's easy. So, Allison, that's a good sign.
Well, I've got my green on. It didn't turn out to be a manic Monday or Black Monday. I mean, people were so worried. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrific. And I think that we don't know what is going to happen, but we do see people are coming to the negotiation table, specifically Japan. They're first in line, and it looks like they may get the best deal or one of the best deals, and that seems to be the predicate here, is that if you are early to the table, you may get the best deal.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of investors out there are probably putting up a little prayer this morning that things are going to turn around, which I think is a perfect setup, Allison, for our Bible verse of the day.
Absolutely.
Nicely done.
Well, let's check out today's Bible verse. It's from the book of Genesis, book 28, verse 15. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Well, as we said, the stock market took another hit yesterday as people grow fearful of what could happen when President Trump's tariffs take effect. President Trump continues to urge the American people to remain calm. Trump posted on Truth Social, the United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panikin. That apparently is a new party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient. And greatness will be the result. For more, let's bring in RAB Chief White House Correspondent Brian Glenn. Good morning, Brian. How you doing?
Good morning, guys. Great to be here.
Okay, so what's the latest on the tariffs at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting because I spoke to a friend on the phone yesterday about the market, and I was like, are you getting
calls. He's a stock broker, and he says, no, the only calls I'm getting right now are from Democrats. All of my conservative clients feel pretty confident about the market. Now, in terms of tariffs, yesterday with Prime Minister Israel in the Oval Office, that topic came up quite a bit as far as reciprocal tariffs and actually, negotiating with these countries. Well, we've had 50 plus countries reach out to the White House in regards to their tariffs and what they want to potentially do to negotiate that down. It's working. Not only are we seeing negotiations start, which would not have started if these tariffs wouldn't be in place, but we're also finding that we can make some money on this stuff and we can actually help trim into our deficit that just keeps building. So as far as tariffs is concerned, I like the T word here today. I think it's working here at the Capitol and then here, obviously, at the White House.
Well, Brian, if your stomach is grumbling a little bit, it's because I'm ready to talk about bacon. In this particular case, Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon. He's getting ready to introduce legislation to limit President Trump's ability to impose tariffs. It basically piggybacks off of a bill in the Senate calling for similar measures. Bacon says that he has support for his move. Check this out.
And I have some beginning support on the House side, which we'll unveil tomorrow. It will be harder to pass this in the House, no doubt. I think if we get 60 votes in the Senate, they'll put pressure on the House to look at this. And if we continue to see the stock market go a certain direction, or if we see inflation or unemployment shift in a bad way, I think then this bill becomes a very viable bill. So it will not pass tomorrow or maybe in the next couple of weeks, but this will be in the queue that we can use. And it's time that Congress restores its authorities here.
Brian, how closely is the White House watching all of this, and does it believe that this bill is going to get traction either in the House or in the Senate?
Don Bacon has not seen a war he did not want to fund. Don Bacon is a globalist, and Don Bacon's little idea of preventing these tariffs is dead on arrival. It will not get support in the House, and it will certainly not be signed by the president behind me in any form or fashion. This is exactly what the Republicans have voted against year after year. Don Bacon's the reason why we have this deficit that we have. Don Bacon's the reason why we get involved in these wars. Don Bacon is in a very purple district, so he's got to tote the line here. But he is not in lockstep with the Republican Party, the majority of the Republican Party, the MAGA-based Republican Party. So this is stupid what he's doing right now, quite frankly.
Yeah, and let's be clear, he needs to check the historical record, because back in 1934, Congress actually abdicated their responsibility and gave that power of administrating tariffs to the executive, to the president. So he just needs to kind of, as we like to say in 1984, take a chill pill. All right, hey, Brian, all right, so the Supreme Court gave the Trump administration, this was a huge win on allowing them, for now at least, to use the Alien Enemies Act for deportations. I'm curious what you're hearing from the White House on this. I mean, ultimately, they are going to have to provide the due process for these folks before they just deport them on a plane to El Salvador. But then again, due process, and people might not like it, but in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, it says you have to provide due process to people in the United States, not citizens. And the Supreme Court has backed that up. So even, believe it or not, yes, even illegal aliens have due process rights in the United States, even though that's a tough pill to swallow, Brian.
It is. Hang on. I'm trying to swallow it right now. It is a tough pill to swallow. And quite frankly, that was going to be my question yesterday in the Oval Office as that news developed during that meeting with the Prime Minister. That was going to be my question to him. Look, it's at the end of the day, we just need these individuals out of this country. I think they're doing an excellent job rounding them up. And of course, let the media, let the Democrats continue to play this song of defending drug cartels, bad gang members that are in this country. It plays well for us in the ads that we can run in 2026 midterms. But yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow right now. But at the end of the day, let's give them the due process, and then let's get them the heck on the next flight out of here.
And Brian, in this case, I think it's also a win for the administration in terms of judge shopping, because I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this was a ruling that said, hey, you cannot bring this case in Washington, D.C. This case needs to go back to Texas when we're talking about that one deportee. Your thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, I mean, getting rid of these kind of rogue hearings, if you will, it all takes place behind me. And I think that the executive orders are the executive orders. The rule of law is the rule of law. The Constitution is the Constitution. And we certainly want to make sure that we follow all of that. And I think by trying these individuals in whatever court that we can find the best judgment in is not the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, we just got to, remain. Look, follow the law, follow the Constitution. Come into this country. Here's the overwhelming message here. Come into this country legally and don't break the laws. And we're not talking about any of this right now. Right. But unfortunately, that's not what's happened. Real quickly, I'll add to this note. According to, I got a source here about Iran. You guys were talking about that earlier. The Pentagon prepares for potential strike on Iran amid surging regional military buildup. I'm hearing that a lot of assets are being deployed towards Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan as this continues to build. And that was one of my other questions. Are we looking at getting into another war this time? It seemed like with Iran. So much going on here in the White House and in the news. And as the protesters, you may not be able to hear them right now, but they're just right outside here because apparently that's what they do at 8:12 on a Tuesday morning in D.C.
Well, Brian, it looks like it is a beautiful day there in D.C., so enjoy the day. And thank you so much for being here, as always. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV Newsroom with T. Bates. And later, the European Union says it is proposing eliminating some tariffs against the U.S. Could we see a deal with Europe soon? We take a look ahead on American Sunrise.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
St. Louis, Missouri on a Tuesday. Of course, when I think of St. Louis, Missouri, I think of also the Ozarks in Missouri. And then I think of Dr. G, who's vacationing, but she will be back next week with us. Great to have everybody here on on the big show. Welcome back to American Sunrise, everybody. I'm David Brody. All right, coming up, there are a lot of countries that are trying to negotiate with President Trump over tariffs. China, not one of them, at least not now. There is a trade war for sure between China and the United States taking place as we speak. And we will dissect the details in a moment. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
President Trump says his administration is beginning the process of direct talks with Iran over its nuclear program and other issues. Those talks set to kick into high gear Saturday.
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon. You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is. So they can't have it. Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it. But I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that, too, as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The talks are scheduled to happen in Oman. There's already a bit of discord between the two sides, though, as Iran's foreign minister claims the negotiations will be indirect and not direct. The high-level discussion will involve Iran's foreign minister and President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. Oman's foreign minister will serve as a mediator. The release of the remaining hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza could also be part of the negotiation. The Trump administration can continue deporting suspected gang members who are in this country illegally under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. On Monday, the Supreme Court granted the administration's request to lift a temporary block on deportations using that law. However, the ruling calls for judicial review of the measure and specifies that detainees, quote, must receive notice after the date of this order that they are subject to removal under the act. The notice must be afforded within a reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs. Dozens of suspected Tren de Aragua gang members have already been deported under the law. They were sent to a prison in El Salvador. And just into our newsroom this morning, the administration is working on plans to fine illegal immigrants who are under deportation orders if they fail to leave the United States. The fines will reportedly be up to $998 a day and could include seizure of property if left unpaid. It would all be permitted under a 1996 law that hasn't been enforced since President Trump's first term in office. Reuters quotes an anonymous senior administration official who says the penalties would be enforced retroactively for up to 5 years as well. The start date of the fines remains unclear as the administration is still working to determine whether Border Patrol or ICE will administer the fines. There's also the issue of hiring more paralegals to handle the expected number of cases. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming up in a little bit, including new breakthroughs in preventing multiple sclerosis. In moments, details on a common vitamin that seems to be working. But next, President Trump is threatening more tariffs against China. What could this mean for your pocketbook? We'll assess. Right now, though, a quick look at this day in history.
Right about now, I'm thinking, I hope this works.
On this date in 1983 that famed magician David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. 50 million people watched the trick live on television. Copperfield reportedly had the stage rotated and took the Statue of Liberty out of view in order to make this trick happen. More American Sunrise coming your way in 2 minutes.
If I successfully vanish the statue, searchlights that passed through the empty space that was occupied just moments before.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. President Trump is threatening an additional 50% tariff against China. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, therefore, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. Additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with us will be terminated. Negotiations with other countries, which have also requested meetings, will begin taking place immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This comes after Trump announced a 34% tariff on China last week, which does take effect tomorrow. For more, let's bring in the chief spokesperson for America First Policy Institute, Jen Pellegrino. Jen, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Hey, good morning, Emily. Thanks for having me on.
So do you see China coming to the table on this, or is this going to be an all-out trade war?
You know, I think they're going to have to. We've heard from our Treasury Secretary, Bessent, say that more than 70 countries have now come to the table willing to negotiate, and good deals will lead to good terms. So I think China ultimately will have to, but President Trump is playing the long game here. He's playing for the end game, which is the American people. This is an America First policy here. And obviously, there's a little bit of pain in the short term. And certainly for China, you see that in their response. But they have the most to lose here. I mean, you look at our economy, 70% of that is consumer spending. China needs to come to the table. It's just a matter of when they will and what that will look like. But President Trump knows what he's doing here. And I think the American people largely voted for that and need to trust in that and not listen to what we're hearing in the establishment media, which is panic, panic, panic. Again, this is the long game for the American people.
Hey, Jen, Terrance here. Good to see you. You laid out the situation involving China. It's a completely different story, it appears, when it comes to the U.S. and the European Union. We're now seeing reports that the EU is offering the Trump administration the removal of all industrial tariffs, and they're ready to negotiate. EU officials also saying they're always ready for a good deal, and they've offered President Trump a 0-0 tariff on industrial goods. How do you see this ultimately playing out, and is the rest of the world pretty much going to follow Europe in really kind of coming to the negotiating table and saying, okay, President Trump, we're willing to do whatever you really want us to do?
Well, Terrance, I think that's going to be the way it goes. I mean, ultimately, you see President Trump holding the line on this. He says, listen, hang tough, everybody. We're hearing a lot of panic right now. That's not the case. Again, this is to bring manufacturing back home. This is to grow our economy, bring back that golden age that he promised on the campaign trail. And yes, there is going to be that short-term pain, but it's going to bring the jobs back that we've lost over the years. And you haven't seen a president that's been willing to take such a risk. And obviously, it's created a lot of controversy for him. But again, people aren't focusing on the long term here, which we will see, ending that great American ripoff that we've seen over decades now. Bringing those jobs back home, getting these countries to come to the table and negotiate. And again, you go back to the Treasury Secretary saying, we've had 70 countries coming to the table wanting to work things out. So I think in time, as President Trump stands tall and stands strong on this, that you'll see that happen.
Hey, Jen, David Brody here. Great to have you this morning. President Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, defending the use of tariffs, blames other countries for unfair trade practices. Let's take a look at this. Have a look.
So what is enough? Okay, you take any given country, they're like fingerprints. They all cheat us in a different way. So here are the things they cheat us on. Some of them engage in currency manipulation. Some of them have a hefty VAT tax. All of them dump into our markets. All of them engage in heavy export subsidies and government subsidies. All of them put up these phony technical and phytosanitary barriers to our ag products and our autos and everything in between. Many of them steal our intellectual property. A lot of them run sweatshop labor, including forced child labor. They have pollution havens. So when you say to me, Ed, what do we want from them? We want fairness.
Well, Jen, that whole long list makes perfect sense. I mean, you juxtapose that versus what Biden was doing in that administration. I mean, what a difference.
Isn't it funny, David, you think back now, how it wasn't that long ago that we were dealing with those dark times under the Biden administration, and how quickly people, especially the media is really who I'm pointing to, how quickly they forget how difficult things were for people. Obviously, again, you're going to feel a little bit of pain right now, but this is to bring things back home. It's to bring production back home, not foreign assembly lines. Peter Navarro did another interview last night where he said, listen, I guarantee no recession. I guarantee this return to the golden age. Americans should be outraged when you see numbers like that, when you see these deficits, when you see how they've taken advantage of us over decades now. Why hasn't any president done anything about that? Well, President Trump is committing to do that, even though I'm sure it's been painful for them and dealing with a lot of the media right now who's so negative about this move. But again, the American people largely support it, David, and they want to see things get back to where, it's a level playing field where, again, we've built in the leverage on these tariffs, I think, where we can get to a place that's comfortable for everyone and the American people can prosper once again.
Yeah, Jen, I think President Trump is certainly bringing some fairness back to our foreign trade agreements here, which is very, very much needed. But the American people, I think, are thinking, what does this mean for me? How is this going to impact me individually? So, President Trump keeps telling us to hang tight. There is going to be some short-term pain for some long-term gain. But how long is this long-term that we're looking at?
Well, according to the Treasury Secretary, these negotiations could take place over the next few months here. It's hard to say. I can't predict what the inflation will look like. Obviously, there's going to be some pain passed along temporarily to the American people in terms of higher prices. The White House has acknowledged that. So it could be a short period of time, but you see the markets also responding, starting to even out a little bit from the massive fluctuations that we saw in the last couple of days here. So, it's hard to say a timeline on that, Emily, but I think we're going to get to a better place. And you see that in the investments already that have been announced. A lot of corporations are saying we're going to bring manufacturing to America. President Trump said, I think something like $5 trillion was the number he gave out in terms of the investments that have been committed to thus far. So and it's an exciting time. And again, you have to consider the end game here, not looking in the moment in the day to day, but it will come sooner rather than later. And I think this is something that should be celebrated.
You mentioned earlier that the whole point of these tariffs is really to kind of reinvigorate manufacturing here in this country. And it seems to me, and I'd like you to put this into context, that even if there's a 0-to-0 tariff, the idea is that now American products can be sold really at the same price as these products that we're importing. So really, it levels the playing field and makes American prices just as palatable, or American products just as palatable as some of these foreign products. Can you put that into perspective?
Exactly, Terrance. And you think of for how long have we watched around election years, all these politicians talking about, we want made in America, we're bringing back made in America, manufacturing in America. And we've never seen such strong actions. I apologize. We've got to cut you off here.
To bring that manufacturing back. Speaking outside the White
so
House.
Obviously, that's an exciting time for the American.
Yeah, it's something you would want to.
I'm sorry. We want to interrupt you, Jen, really quickly. I apologize. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, speaking outside the White House right now. Let's go there live.
I know the Supreme Court just issued that today, deciding whether he should be sent back to the United States. Why does the Justice Department believe that he should?
Well, first of all, it was an administrative error as to why he was deported, and he is a known gang member. ICE testified he was a gang member, and we believe he should stay where he is. You know, the defense had argued that he was, a journeyman, that he was training to be an electrician. Well, the last gang member we arrested, who was a violent murderer, was also hanging wallpaper in a place called the Villages in Florida, one of the biggest retirement places in our country. So these people are living among us. One of the big cases we had, I think you're very aware of, half an hour from where we're standing, was another violent gang member living right among us in a very, very nice residential neighborhood. Wreaths on the door next door to him, children's bicycles. So that's what these gangs do. They infiltrate our country and they live among us. So to say that he was training to be an electrician does not legitimize him from being a violent gang member. And we will continue to fight for the safety of Americans and get these people out of our country to make America safe. Every victim of crime deserves to be safe. And these families who have lost loved ones to these, they are foreign adversaries, they are terrorists, and they are living among us no longer. And especially after that ruling yesterday, they better start self-deporting because we're coming after them.
Two quick questions if we can. I was asking about the ruling yesterday from the Supreme Court. Obviously, it allows you to move forward with using the Alien Enemies Act to deport these alleged gang members and others here. It says they're entitled to due process, though, as well. Your take on the ruling and what does it mean for your ability to deport?
Yeah, sure, Peter. What the ruling says is, as from yesterday forward, what we can do is we can still deport, but they are entitled to habeas in the court of confinement, which means all of these cases will go through Texas. There will be no more class actions. It will be two questions asked. Do you qualify under Alien Enemies, and are you a violent gang member? Are you a member of TDA? That's what will be asked.
Let me ask you about the DHS. The administration broadly has revoked the legal status of those individuals who came in from south of the border through the CBP app that was produced by the former administration. So should those individuals who followed the rules as they existed at the time be forced to leave the country now?
Well, Peter, the rules at the time weren't fair. The rules were dangerous to Americans. I went to the border in September. I was in Yuma, Arizona, and I saw piles and piles of driver's license, IDs, passports from every country you can imagine thrown at the gate. They were handed cell phones, the CBP app, what you were discussing. They could come in, get on a phone, enter the country. If they didn't have ID, then they could identify that they were from any country they chose to be from. A Border Patrol agent told me Venezuelan men were coming in saying they were from China. Chinese people were coming in saying they were from any country, Ireland, any country they wanted to identify that they were from, and they were walking right into our country. So we have to look at all those cases because that's the safety and concern for our citizens. One other thing at the border is if you were a family, it made it much easier to come into the country. I learned a new term while I was at that border, and that was called a disposable child. Border Patrol agents were seeing children, the same child, coming in time and time again, a little boy they recognized over and over coming into our country, and they couldn't figure out why. That child had been trafficked, and he was posing as a family member. They had kidnapped a child, and when they recognized him multiple times, they realized he wasn't part of that family. So what was happening at that border was dangerous. I went to a rape crisis center. Nothing at that border was humane, and nothing protected American citizens, nor many of the people people coming through it, because I firmly believe many of those women and children were trafficked.
Attorney General, 60 Minutes found that 75% of the immigrants who were sent to El Salvador do not have public criminal records. Is that true?
Do you mean in our country?
The Venezuelan migrants who were sent to...
Well, they're not Venezuelan migrants. They're illegal aliens from Venezuela who should not have been in our country, who are committing the most violent crimes. So if you committed a murder in our country, we're going to keep you here, and we're going to seek the death penalty, and we're going to keep you in prison because our victims' families deserve that. But we don't have to charge them with every crime. We can deport them and get them out of our country and save room in our prisons because they should have never been in our country to begin with.
So you confirm they didn't commit a crime, right? Is that what you're confirming?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
Attorney General Pam Bondi there asking or answering questions from the media as she's now heading inside the White House. She was outside the White House. Allison and David joining us. David, obviously, much of the focus there was on the Trump policies as it relates to the border and continuing to secure the border.
Yeah, and obviously the Trump administration happy with the decision, and it makes sense. I mean, remember, it's the Supreme Court didn't say that due process had to be given to these illegal aliens because federal law already requires it. And you have to do it. So this idea that the Supreme Court said that, okay, well, actually, you can deport them, but first you got to give them due process. Well, that's the law. That's the law in our country. You have to do that. Now, having said that, there are specific certain delineation lines in there where you don't have to maybe give them, how do I say this, kind of full due process. I mean, there are ways to kind of go around that. But I think we're going to find out more. Pam Bondi was kind of hinting at that they're going to basically give them due process, but it might not be that full due process that we have come to expect, Allison. We'll see.
And she was very firm there, pushing back on reporters when someone said they're migrants. She said, no, these are illegal aliens. So she's holding firm there this morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, turning from politics to other aspects of our health and well-being. And for that, let's bring in the chief scientific officer for the wellness company, Dr. Peter McCullough. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Okay, good. The Trump administration's recent tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals have raised some concerns about rising prescription drug prices. What impact do you foresee these tariffs on having costs go up or down for medications?
Dozens of countries have come forward and say they want to, negotiate with the Trump administration, except for China. That's the problem. China is the major source of the ingredients and the prescription pharmaceutical products. So many people are coming to the wellness company to get emergency kits, particularly the field kit, which is a broad supply of pre-prescribed medications. Wellness company, we have our own pharmacy in Boca Raton, as well as a pharmacy for our members in Beaumont, Texas. So we've secured a product line now. There could be short-term shortages of medications, and we're well positioned to fill that gap.
Yeah, it seems like China is the big kit and caboodle. So when you're talking about these wellness kits, what are some of the items in the wellness kits that perhaps we would normally be getting from China?
Well, we certainly have the full suite of antibiotics, antivirals, corticosteroids, EpiPens, antiemetics. These are the critical supplies that patients need. Now, as members or those who seek care at the wellness company, we have supplies of insulin, antihypertensives, cholesterol medications, heart medications. So I think people need to take steps now so they don't get burned. And as your prior guest said, there probably will be some short-term pain. We don't want to see people go without, life-saving critical medications.
And as we have this standoff with China, what type of increases do you think you'll see at TWC as opposed to other companies out there?
Well, because we're so far ahead of the game, we don't plan for any price increases in the short term here. So we're in good shape. Long term, we hope this will be a stimulus to bring back pharmaceutical manufacturing for critical medications like antibiotics and others to the United States. We have the capacity. We've just been undercut by China for many, many years, and that looks like that's going to come to an end.
That's such a good point. Now, one other subject here, access to compounded semaglutides is reportedly being curtailed. Can you tell us a little bit about this development and its implications for those trying to seek alternatives to Ozempic and Wegovy?
Mm-hmm. Well, these drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists do cause, tremendous losses in weight, very favorable cardiac and renal outcomes data, but the compounded access is going to go away. The shots once a week actually do have side effects and have, significant concerns. Now it's available through forms of drops, oral drops, peptide drops that are safe, offered through the wellness company. 2 products. One is called Drop. That's for support people through substantial weight loss using retatrutide. And then another product, which is actually compounded Ozempic, available through the liquid format, and that's available through drops as well. So these products are going to help people greatly on their weight loss journey.
Very interesting. How do you see the side effects of drops comparing to injectables?
I already have patients on it. It's much less. Patients can control the dose themselves, as opposed to getting a shot and then being stuck with what's in their body. It's clearly going to be the way to go here. I think you're going to see a big movement off of once weekly injections into the oral drops.
Well, that sounds really interesting. Nobody wants a shot, doctor. So these drops may be the way to go. Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you so much for being here this morning. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Coming up is the next woke fad, polygamy. That story coming up next as American Sunrise continues.
Welcome back. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. Time now to stay awake, not woke, brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. You know, we try a lot of coffee around here, but 1775 coffee has quickly become a favorite at Real America's Voice, and here's why. First, it's roasted right here in Florida by folks who actually care about what goes into your cup. Small batches, always fresh, never sitting on a shelf for months. And they're sourced from small farms in Bolivia, which means it's real coffee. None of that cheap factory-produced stuff that gets churned out by the ton. If you're someone who likes a good dark roast or a smooth medium, they've got both. Bold, rich flavor, no bitterness, and definitely no acidity. They also have a mushroom coffee blend, and listen, if you haven't tried that yet, it's not what you think. It tastes like real coffee, but gives you that extra brain boost with 5 functional mushrooms. And if you're a K-Cup drinker, you're covered there as well. Their pods are filled with actual fresh coffee, not powdered junk. So if you're like us and drink coffee every day, make it something good and from a company that shares your values. Just head to 1775coffee.com/RAV and make sure to use the promo code RAV for 10% off your order. Give it a shot. You'll taste and feel the difference. All right, well, now that we are caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. And this headline will certainly wake you up. According to the American Spectator, woke polygamy is now a thing. Polygamy is, of course, having more than one spouse. And seriously, you heard that right. Young American women are reportedly giving up on the concept of marriage entirely. But what's causing this? A recent poll from the Survey Center on American Life finds 45% of single college-educated women say the reason they're not dating is because they can't find a suitable partner who, quote, measures up to their standards. As a result, dating experts believe polygamy may become legally sanctioned and even socially acceptable throughout American society as progressive beliefs about sexuality become more and more mainstream. Taking a listen to this.
You just have to look at the reality of the situation. Like, especially in Atlanta, men are outnumbered by the women here. So the competition is fierce. So you got to be realistic. Like, it's going to be women throwing coochie at women, these men left and right. So when it does happen, I feel like the women need to have a mentality is kind of expected.
Yikes, that is so sad. The American Spectator argues woke and cosmopolitan polygamy could become the latest female empowerment fad, with more "you go girl" headlines encouraging sharing sexual partners. I mean, I am just absolutely in shock here. Let's bring in Allison, David, and Terrance for discussion. Sad state of affairs for young dating women today, you guys. Terrance, I know there's one song in particular that comes to mind for you on this. Let's get your thoughts first.
My wife is watching. Are you serious? It was a joke. It was a joke. Emily. This is such a disturbing trend. And as you were reading this story, Emily, I really thought of what my grandmother and mother used to say, the best place to find a good woman is at church. And I think as a society, we probably need to get back to that, because meeting someone at church implies that there's a shared value system, if you will, that there's a certain tradition that you want to follow. And so maybe that's what we need to return to for young ladies out there who are looking for a husband, not just a man or a boyfriend, but a husband. That may be the place to start. I'm going to go there. And shame on you for bringing up my song choice, Emily.
All right, I yield. That was a perfect response, Terrance. We know we were just joking earlier.
I yield, Miss Allison. You have the floor.
Oh, man, this is absolutely horrible. I say no, no, and no to polygamy and the message of polygamy. And it really makes me sad that this is the message that potentially could go out to women. I think that over the past 2 decades, women have been led down such a wrong road. They've really received so many different messages that they don't know what to believe, and it's really low expectations that so many women have learned to accept. And I speak as a woman who I really have been part of feminism, the feminist movement. but the messaging was really off, and it kind of sparked in my brain that how off it was when I went to one of those Charlie Kirk Young Women's Leadership Summit. And I heard some of the women start talking about the importance of marriage and family and how a different message had been given out to women over the past couple of decades. And I was like, yeah, I totally get that. I was part of that group that received that message, like, freeze your eggs and find a man later. And so now to bring in polygamy as an option, an actual viable option, it's just not right. Please help the women out there. Help the single ladies. This is not the message I want going out there. Sorry, that took a long time, but I feel very strongly about it.
Bring it home, David.
Yeah. Well, I'll be brief. We always hear trust the science, trust the facts. I mean, traditional marriage, one man, one woman. Excuse me. I say women after polygamy. That's great.
One woman.
Way to go, David. As I talk in the third person as well. One man, one woman. That's it. That's what the empirical data shows. That's best for kids. It's best for your marriage. I will put some of the blame also here on men. There are weak men out there. Too many weak men. And I think women are looking for other options, and that's not a good thing. So I think we men have to look in the mirror and say, are we showing up? Are we showing up ready to lead? Because I think polarity in a marriage is crucial, and I think this is all part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All
and
great
if I can
points.
just add one last point, instead of just being a man, be a husband. Be ready to be a husband. Don't just be ready to be a woman's man. Be ready to be a woman's husband.
We got the music.
Don't accept the crumbs. No crumbs. Well said, men. All right, now coming up, living with godly values starts in the home. We were just talking about this. And fathers, they are the leading examples for their families on how to live the Bible's teachings. A new campaign wants to make dads great again by inspiring men to connect with their faith. That's coming up next as American Sunrise continues.
God bless the USA.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. It's time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, a new initiative is aiming to make dads great again, praising fathers for instilling godly values in the household and inspiring men to re-engage with their Christian faith. The national campaign from PromiseKeepers released an emotional new ad video thanking fathers for being leaders, protectors, and providers for their families. The organization is fighting against what they describe as America's fatherhood crisis, saying the effects of absent dads are responsible for current culture and chaos. PromiseKeepers hopes their advertisements will inspire men to spark a national conversation about biblical manhood and fatherhood.
Dad.
Daddy.
Seems like just yesterday. We were playing in the yard. You were showing me how to ride a bike. Now I've got a family of my own. Where did the time go? I just wanted to say thanks for everything.
And we want to welcome in our next guest, the CEO of PromiseKeepers, Shane Winning. Shane, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hope you can hear me well in this windy Florida day we're having.
Oh, we got you. Okay, you are the man behind this ad. And I don't know if you heard our last segment. We were having a very spirited discussion about men and women. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that any deviation from God's design, which is one man and one woman in a loving covenant of marriage, raising children, any deviation from that, statistics will show that America and the world at large is worse off. And, that's by design. And that's my argument to anyone who wants to come against faith. I say, well, just look at the numbers. Look at the data that any mixture of two men, two women, any abnormal household situation besides one man and a woman raising a child, all the statistics get worse. And so it's almost like God knew what he was doing when he created us and gave us instructions to be fruitful and multiply within the confines of marriage.
I love this ad. Where can people find it if they want to check it out? And just quickly, if you could tell us why it was so important for you to create it.
Yeah, they can go to www.promisekeepers.org. It's on our homepage. It's on YouTube. It's on all social media. We need to make dads great again. And we as Christians and family people, we know that dads are great, but it seems like the culture and the narrative of the world is saying the opposite. And it's demasculinizing men. It's promoting true toxic masculinity like Andrew Tate, who says you can lord over women, you should have kids with as many women as possible. We want to make the idea of the nuclear family and men as the leaders and the dads of that family great again. So that's what we aim to do here at PromiseKeepers.
Make dads great again. Love it. Thank you, Shane, for being here this morning. And we will be back with the second hour of American Sunrise in 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
up on this second hour of American Sunrise, all eyes remain on the markets after a topsy-turvy couple of days. Is the turmoil finally coming to an end, or will the stocks continue to sink? We've got the details ahead. And Hunter's early dirty deeds, and his daddy's dementia-fueled decline is finally exposed by the lamestream media. So what took them so long? Find out. And for love of God and country, music icon Lee Greenwood will be here to discuss religion, liberty, and his legacy. All of that and so much more right now on this second hour of American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Allison Hans down in West Palm. She's in for the vacationing Dr. G. And T. Bates in Denver. Good morning to both of you. And Allison, I got to tell you, I mean, talk about fires everywhere. You got the tariff stuff going on, but now we're getting word that President Trump's going to meet with House Republicans at 1 o'clock this afternoon to discuss the budget resolution. This is not the Reconciliation Act. That comes later, obviously. But this is the budget resolution that did pass the House, or excuse me, the Senate. But the House is not digging this at all. It's not conservative enough. And so that's another fire, Allison, that's going on. It's like 3-alarm, 4-alarm fires everywhere you go.
And then you've got panicking Don Bacon running around doing his thing.
Right.
So that's no good. Yeah, so many things happening, but we are on top of everything. And we've got our Brian Glenn at the White House. He's on top of everything. So that's always fantastic.
Yeah.
Right, guys. In the meantime, let's take a look at some of the day's headlines, because as you mentioned, there's a lot to talk about. President Trump says his administration is beginning the process of direct talks with Iran over its nuclear program and other issues. Those talks are set to kick into high gear on Saturday.
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it. Great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon. You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is. So you can't have it. Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The discussion is set to happen in Oman. There's already a bit of discord between the two sides, though, as Iran's foreign minister claims the negotiations will be indirect and not direct. The high-level discussion will involve Iran's foreign minister and President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. Oman's foreign minister will serve as a mediator. The release of the remaining hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza could also be part of this negotiation. The Trump administration can continue deporting suspected gang members who were in this country illegally under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. On Monday, the Supreme Court granted the administration's request to lift a temporary block on deportations using that law. However, the ruling calls for judicial review of the measure, and it specifies the detainees, quote, must receive notice after the date of this order that they are subject to removal under the act. The notice must be afforded within a reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs. In other words, due process. Dozens of suspected Trinidad gang members have already been deported under the law. They were sent to a prison in El Salvador. And just into our newsroom this morning, the administration is working on plans to fine illegal immigrants who are under deportation orders if they fail to leave the United States. The fines will reportedly be up to $998 a day and could include seizure of property if left unpaid. It would all be permitted under a 1996 law that hasn't been enforced since President Trump's first term in office. Reuters quotes an anonymous senior administration official saying the penalties would be enforced retroactively retroactively for up to 5 years. The start date of the fines remains unclear at this point, as the administration is still working to determine whether Border Patrol or ICE will administer the fines. Plus, there's the issue of hiring more paralegals to handle the expected number of cases. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll, of course, have more headlines coming your way in just a little bit. But now, let's get you over to David and Allison.
Okay, T, appreciate it. Turn our attention now to basically all of the goings-on in Washington, D.C. It's there that we find John Solomon, the editor-in-chief of Just the News. John, good to have you with us. I guess we all should put our jogging pants and suit or whatever it is on, because we got to keep up with this type of stuff. This is insane. I mean, it's like Wizard of Oz, you know, lions, tigers, and bears. Instead, it's like tariffs, border resolutions, and Iran. Oh, my. Take your pick. Where do you want to go first? You have at it, John.
Yeah, listen, I think the most consequential thing that happened about 7 o'clock last night, right as we were finishing up our show, when the Supreme Court really slapped down Judge James Boasberg. And this is a slap down. It isn't just a technical ruling that lifts a temporary restraining order. They told the judge you had no right to take this case. It should have been taken in Texas, where the Venezuelan gang members were being held. That's the standing. 2, you should have paid attention to our 1948 ruling, the Supreme Court's 1948 ruling that says a president can, in fact, use the Alien Enemies Act in times of non-war if the threat from a combatant is real. And 3, that there's very little judicial review except for habeas corpus. 3 things that Judge Boasberg overtly ignored when he made his rulings that blocked the president from deporting people under the Alien Enemies Act. This is a shot heard round the judicial world. It is a warning to all judges that if you get over your skis going forward, you're going to get batted down by the Supreme Court. It's a warning against overreach. It's a warning against venue shopping, which is one of the things that the lawyers in this case did. They had Texas clients, but they took them to Washington, D.C. to get a more favorable judge. This could have a significant ripple effect in the several days that are ahead of us. And so keep an eye on this. We've been wondering, when will the Supreme Court rein in judges? Well, it happened yesterday in a really dramatic fashion. This is if you're a federal judge, you woke up this morning, you're put on notice by the 9 justices of the Supreme Court.
John, are we on the precipice of war with Iran? What are your sources there in Washington, D.C. saying, particularly given the warning from President Trump yesterday to Iran, basically come to these meetings, come to the negotiating table in good faith, or otherwise you could be in trouble? And I ask you this question with the context of the administration also moving several B-2 bombers into place there in the Indian Ocean. Sure. It almost feels like there's a staging for a potential attack. What are your sources saying, and what's the feeling there in Washington?
Well, let's start with the reality. Iran is on the precipice of having a nuclear weapon. When I say the precipice, I mean the current U.S. intelligence is that it could make a nuclear warhead in less than 2 days, a single one. Within a month, they could have a half dozen. Within 2 months, they could have a dozen nuclear warheads. A nuclear-armed Iran has always been a red line for the United States, even under Barack Obama, even under Joe Biden. So the question is, what can be done? Step 1 is to have these talks in Oman on Saturday with Steve Witkoff, a guy who's had a lot of success negotiating with tough characters and getting things done, like Hamas hostages sent home, a temporary ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, early progress on the Ukraine-Russia deal. Can he pull it off here with Iran? To be determined. But Iran is a difficult and often slow-moving negotiator, likes to drag things out so it can buy more time for its nuclear weapons program. President Trump, in that Oval Office statement yesterday, made clear, I'm not going to play a long game with this. If Iran wants a deal, it's now or suffer the consequences. I do believe that Israel and the United States would be prepared to take significant strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities should a deal fall through. And I think that is it, whether it's a long-term war or a temporary strike designed to set back Iran from having those nuclear weapons, to be determined by the President of the United States after these talks next weekend.
Thank you, John, so much for that clear response. I really appreciate that. Meanwhile, John, why did it possibly take the legacy media more than 4 years to begin investigating Democratic scandals? The New York Post called out the New York Times for a recent piece they did about Hunter Biden's influence peddling schemes. The former first son allegedly used his last name and Joe Biden's political status to get some business deals done when Joe was vice president, years before his daddy won the White House. Your take?
Well, it's pretty simple. When I broke the first stories about Joe Biden in May and April of 2019, the son of a bee, I told them they don't get their $1 billion if they don't do what I asked them to do. That was the story. I found that video, broke that story, opened up the entire Pandora's box. It was Hunter Biden. For the first month, the New York Times, in fact, the very reporter that wrote about it this week, Ken Vogel, wrote a story saying what I wrote was true and that there might be more to it. And then ABC News followed up and wrote the same thing. And then the Biden administration put the hard squeeze on the traditional media. And all of a sudden, news organizations that said it were true started calling it conspiracy theories. Of course, it never was a conspiracy theory. This is what we call in journalism a CYA story. This is designed after years and years of denying the truth. The New York Times will write one story saying, oh, see, we covered it. We got it right. It's just like what they did with Joe Biden's mental status. It's just like they did with Hillary Clinton's email server. It's just like they did with Russia collusion, where they gave us 3 years of there's a conspiracy and then said, oh, well, we knew there wasn't a conspiracy. The news media has been in the back pocket in a protection racket with the Democrats that they socialize with and hang out with and sympathize with in Washington, D.C. And they are willing to corrupt the American public's understanding of facts to keep those relationships good. All they do after the fact is when the game's up, they blow the whistle and write one story saying, oh, yeah, we told you it was. It's terrible. It's a bad cycle. But the American people are on top of it.
For sure. And you're always on top of it. John Solomon, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to meet you guys.
Thanks, John.
All right. Coming up, Republican Senator Rand Paul isn't happy about the president's new tariffs. Why the senator says he is a Donald Trump supporter, but believes tariffs are a terrible mistake. Also, we're going to go live to Wall Street. Get ready. Opening bell less than 20 minutes away. Will the market turmoil continue when the bell rings, or is there optimism on the horizon? American Sunrise, back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Hey, great to have you with us this morning in the chat on Getter, Rumble. Join us there. All right, time now to drain the swamp. This morning, we are thinking that President Trump may want to flush Senator Rand Paul down the drain. On tariffs, the Kentucky Republican senator is pushing back against the president's tariff agenda. He says tariffs are a terrible mistake. Take a look.
The problem we face today with this emergency, though, is that Congress has abdicated their power. Not just recently, not just for this president. This is a bipartisan problem. I am a Republican. I am a supporter of Donald Trump, but this is a bipartisan problem. I don't care if the president is a Republican or a Democrat. I don't want to live under emergency rule. I don't want to live where my representatives cannot speak for me and have a check and balance on power. One person can make a mistake. And guess what? Tariffs are a terrible mistake. They don't work. They will lead to higher prices. They are a tax, and they have historically been bad for our economy.
Yikes. Let's bring in the host of Breaking Point here on RAV, David Zier, to talk about Senator Paul's pushback on Trump's tariffs. He joins us live from our West Palm Beach studios. David, apparently Rand Paul is at his breaking point. He believes that Trump's tariffs may lead to a generational political loss for Republicans. What's your take on what's going on? And good morning to you, sir.
Hi. So, David, great to be with you. I hope Terrance recovered from that polygamy segment earlier. It's unbelievable. But since 1947, we've been taken advantage of with the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the GATT Treaty. And if you remember, under George H.W. Bush, they gave 125 other nations the same voting power as the United States, even though we're the largest economy. So we're always getting taken advantage of. But Rand Paul, in the same breath, also said that he hopes that these negotiations could be quick and we could leverage ourselves. And maybe, and Trump and Ted Cruz even said that this could be a big win for Trump as long as it doesn't drag on too quickly.
Yeah, that's the key. Is it a leverage point, or is this going to just be going on for a while? So who knows exactly what the end game is here? You would think art of the deal that this is a leverage point for sure. By the way, what has you ready to hit your breaking point this week? In other words, who's on your show? You're booking guests already, and it's only Tuesday.
I'm booking guests already. I've been talking to Corey Bowman, J.D. Vance's half-brother. I may have him on again Thursday to talk about his hot race in Cincinnati, another Democratic stronghold with high crime and a tough economy. And then I got Maud Marin running for DA against Alvin Bragg in New York City, where 80% of the crimes still don't get prosecuted. Felony assault still at a 23, 25-year high, along with misdemeanor assault. 17,000 New Yorkers have been assaulted in the streets of New York. So they're bragging about murders and shootings going down, but it's not the real story. Rape's up 22%. And we're going to talk about that. And then I have Vincent Buddha live from Studio 6B on. Got more guests coming up. Don't miss it, 8 a.m. Saturday.
That sounds great. Hey, David, by the way, I got 30 seconds. I got to ask you, you're in New York. I'm in New York. We're from that neck of the woods. AOC, she hasn't announced that she's going to run for Senate. You think she can beat Schumer? I'm assuming she can.
I don't think so. I don't.
You don't think you don't think she can beat Schumer?
I don't.
Interesting.
He's got a lot of resources. I think he'll recover from his latest unpopularity in the Democratic Party. He's entrenched. Oh, and he's worth $75 million.
Oh, yeah, and there's that. Money talks. David Zier, great to have you as always.
Excellent, David.
Everything.
Thank you so much.
All right. By the way, get on Rumble, get on Getter. Let us know. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of David Zier and my wardrobe. We're not offended. Actually, yes, I have a very sensitive ego. All right, coming up on American Sunrise, we've got the president's trade war. Have you heard about it? Financial turmoil continues. Trump's reciprocal tariffs are in play. The bell is about to ring on Wall Street. We're going to take you there live. And later, he's proud to be an American. Lee Greenwood will be here in the flesh. An interview you don't want to miss. Back in a moment.
If tomorrow the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, and thank my lucky stars to be living here today.
morning to you. I believe this is St. Paul, Minnesota. We're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring here in about 7 minutes. So far, so good, at least in early trading. As you can see here, everything is up pretty significantly. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. In fact, I'm seeing some numbers that may even be a little bit higher than what we're seeing there. We'll continue to update this. But gold, silver, crude oil, all also up and in the green right now. Hopefully, that's a positive sign of what we can expect for the rest of this trading day. We, of course, will update you here throughout the morning, and more importantly, we'll take you to the opening bell here in just a few minutes. But first, let's get you over to David Brody. David, good morning.
Good morning, T. Bates. Let's continue along that same trend about those financial markets. As you just mentioned, they're doing much better today. And actually, Asian markets are trading higher as well. Some world leaders have already signaled to Trump that they are willing to negotiate. You've got Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He met with Trump yesterday to discuss tariffs, among other topics. But Trump told reporters during the visit that no tariff reduction yet with Israel. We will wait and see about that. Join us now is the host of America's Voice Live, Steve Gruber. Never a womp womp with Steve. It's always a yay yay because we love having you on the show, Steve. Hey, so what do you think of these markets? Volatile would be a good word for it. I mean, we could see some rebounding today. How do you make sense of it all? Because making sense and me don't go in the same sentence, so maybe you can do it.
Well, let me start with this, David. Good morning, first of all. Let me start with this. Jim Cramer.
Good morning.
Wrong again, Jim Cramer. Wrong again. Yeah. I mean, this guy, it's going to be Black Monday, the end of the world. Jim, take your damn medicine and stop it. Look, we've been here before, 1987, 2008, 2009, 2022 was pretty rotten, the first part of that year as well. So we've been here before. We had 2 days, Thursday and Friday, down 5% each day. Yesterday down, 300 points? Not too big a deal, kind of an adjustment. Today, to update what T. Bates just said, I've got Dow futures opening 1,255 points higher. That's better than 3%. S&P up at 3%. NASDAQ up 3%. So, look, it could be a very positive day. And from what I can track here, it seems to me there's a lot of money on the sidelines right now that wants back in. A lot of money that's been on the sidelines for the last few days, they want back in. They smell opportunity. Well, if opportunity happens, then it pushes us back up. Look. After the drop on Black Monday, 1987, 1 year later, the markets were up 28%. I'm going to go ahead and go with that. I'm going to say that Donald Trump knows what he's doing. Scott Bessent knows what he's doing. Howard Lutnick knows what he's doing. They saw these tariffs. What do we have? The last number I saw, 70 countries are back at the table saying, hey, let's make a deal. What do you want? What do you need from us? The EU say 0 for 0 tariffs. The EU folded that quickly because, look, they can't function without us, David. That's the way it is.
100%.
That's just the way it is.
Steve, that's the thing. I mean, Trump's got the ultimate Trump card. My GDP is bigger than your GDP. You know, you can't survive without us. And so bottom line is these countries come to the table and Trump's like, yeah, go ahead, keep going, keep going, keep going. I mean, time's on his side in the sense that he can get the best deal if he lets this go on a little bit longer.
No, there's no question about that. Look, a lot of people took a bloodbath Thursday, Friday, a little bit yesterday, not too much yesterday, really. Markets off as much as 20% in some of the stocks, but we're coming back. Donald Trump knows this. He has to have this economy up and humming by about a year from now. Take the pain early. Take the pain in 2025, not in 26. If the market's up, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's up anything near like it was in 1988, right? From 87's lows to 88, boom. It'll mean great things for the midterm elections. If the markets are in bad shape, if the economy's not good, things will not be good for the midterms. Donald Trump knows how important that is. So let's talk about this. Inflation is down. Why? Energy prices are way down. The price of a barrel of oil is between $61 and $64 this morning. The price of gasoline's down. You know what happens, David, when the price of oil and gasoline come down? The price of going to the grocery store comes down. The price of going to work comes down. It's good for everybody. It's good for the working man and woman in this country. And this notion, and it's just a notion, that somehow these folks are like, I can't believe I voted for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for that. Lies. It's all lies being perpetrated and put out there by left-wing commentators and anti-Trump people that have always been left-wing commentators, have always been anti-Trump people. I have not met a serious Trump voter yet that said, gosh, I'm disappointed. Not one. There's no buyer's remorse here. They knew there was going to be pain. And look, when you're plus 1276, look at that number there. Up over 3%, the DJIA. There it is. Plus 3.34%. The S&P up 3.25%. The NASDAQ up 3.2%. If it goes up 3.5% today, well, then a lot of those losses from Thursday and Friday are mitigated. And America thrives. And America thrives on vast amounts of cheap energy. So you look at the policies this administration put in place. Inflation is almost non-existent now. The price of energy going down, the price of doing business going down. So this is good news across the board. I'm all in on this Trump economic plan.
Oh, I know you are. I am too, as well. Let's just keep with it. All right. Well, stand by, Steve, because we're going to the Dow right now, the opening bell here in a moment. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to even replenish my makeup. I'm going to stick around to see what this is like. It's the New York Stock Exchange that's sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
We're less than a minute from the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange ringing. The applause is already underway. You can see the folks there on the podium getting ready for the opening bell. And so far, so good. Again, Steve just gave us a preview. The numbers are looking really good right now. Again, that's pre-market trading. The markets will officially open here in a matter of moments, and then we'll see how things ultimately shape up. FDNY Foundation, that's who is at the podium right now. They've had to put out some fires on the markets over the past couple of days, but so far, so good today. Let's take a look here, folks. The Dow is up, as is the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, and this is up pretty significantly. We're talking about up over 3%. That's a breath of fresh air from where we were last week this time and even parts of yesterday. Gold, silver, and crude oil are also up. Let's bring back in Steve Gruber to talk a bit more about this. And Steve, thanks again for updating it, because, again, the numbers that I had and what we were initially seeing were a little different. But as you mentioned a little bit earlier, this is a good sign that the ship is starting to really turn around and right itself, and that the markets are righting themselves.
Well, look, you take out of the mix all of the monopoly money of the COVID years, all right? All that artificial money pumped in by governments here in the United States and around the world. And so this is the ship righting itself globally, not just here in the United States. But you look at the Dow right now, plus 1357. That's almost 3.6%. The NASDAQ, 3.7%. The S&P 500, 3.3%. If this holds throughout the day, it's a very good day for investors and a rebound from Thursday and Friday. So like I said just before the opening bell there, let's stay the course. Let's see the plan from Bessent and Lutnick and, of course, from Donald Trump, and see where it takes us over the next few weeks and months. I think people are going to be pleased.
And, Steve, I think it can't be overstated that the President Trump tariffs are really a reordering of the global economic order. It's not just about the tariffs. It's reordering the global economic order and making sure that America still remains as the top dog, if you will.
Absolutely true. Look, America has been punished. Donald Trump's not wrong about this. There's a reason you don't see American cars in the UK or France or Germany or Japan. That's an easy example of how we have been punished by tariffs as a nation, as manufacturers, as companies for years and years. It's time to reset the global order of the economy and move forward, and Donald Trump is certainly doing that.
Steve Gruber, always good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're back. It means that I have to work a little bit less. So thank you so much for being back, brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you, T.
All right. Well, folks, the IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and with April 15th fast approaching, it's more aggressive than ever. In 2025, enforcement is really ramped up, and if you happen to owe back taxes or if you've got unfiled returns, waiting just isn't an option. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Ignoring your tax troubles is the worst thing you can do. April 15th marks another tax year that's passed you by. Getting ahead of this now is a smart move, but here's something to consider. Never, ever, ever contact the IRS alone. Instead, let the folks over at Tax Network USA handle your issues for you. Why, you ask? Well, it's because not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, which means they know exactly which agents to deal with and which ones to avoid. With proven strategies to settle tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, Tax Network USA's attorneys and their negotiators have already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Talk with one of their strategists today for free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Instead, call 800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. It's all there on your screen. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back here on American Sunrise, music icon Lee Greenwood will be here. All of that when American Sunrise returns.
To American Sunrise. I'm Allison Hans, filling in for Dr. Gina. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We invite you to join the conversation on Getter and Rumble. Time now to take the political pulse of America. The beat today, Idaho lawmakers rally around a colleague with cancer. It's a heartwarming story of solidarity between Republicans and a Democrat. Now, Democratic Congresswoman Brooke Green was diagnosed with breast cancer for a second time. GOP Idaho lawmakers say they were devastated for her upon hearing the news because she had to go through a second round of aggressive chemotherapy. Well, in a show of solidarity, Idaho Republican congressmen went beyond party lines to shave their heads in supporting Congressman Green. These colleagues continued their bipartisan support by supporting House Bill number 134. The state bill would mandate that select health insurance plans must provide coverage for annual checkups for at-risk people. What a fantastic story about Americans uniting behind one another. Wow, just someone else who knows the pulse of America and the goodness of her citizens is music legend Lee Greenwood. The famous singer and songwriter of God Bless the USA joins us now. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you very much, Allison. Great to talk to all of you this morning. Great day in America.
It sure is. How amazing is it to see Republicans and Democrats unite for an American going through tough times like that?
You know, that's amazing. And I love that. I have a sister who lives in Boise, Idaho, by the way, moved all out of California as everyone else has. And I'm so proud of all of them who have done that. I mean, it's just a gesture, but I'm proud of them also for supporting the bill in order to have insurance companies protect people like the congressman.
Absolutely.
Lee, there's a saying that art reflects culture and culture mimics art. President Trump has appointed you to be a board member at the Kennedy Center there in Washington, D.C. He, of course, is the chairman of the board. Can you share some of the plans that may be in the works there to make the prestigious center great again, if you will, to change things, to change the culture at the Kennedy Center?
You know, it's been a big week for us, a big couple of weeks. We opened the Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, Texas, where former President Bush was involved to get that done, and it's a beautiful facility. This past week, I was honored at Horatio Alger in Washington, D.C., and given the honor as a lifetime member of that society, which helps young scholars. When you talk about the goodness of America, one of the most premier performing places in the United States of America is the J.F. Kennedy Performing Center for the Arts. I've never performed there yet. I hope to sometime in the future. But it's a beautiful facility, and what I understand from talking to the president, that it is somewhat in disrepair. And so he intends on taking that challenge on with a new board of trustees, which there are 32 of us now.
Hey, Lee, you said you haven't performed at the Kennedy Center. Hey, all you wanted to do, I believe, a few weeks ago was maybe sing a song at a board meeting, and apparently that didn't happen. President Trump talked about that with reporters a few weeks ago at the Kennedy Center. This is what he said. Take a look.
I have a little problem with some people that work here. We had Lee Greenwood wanted to sing a little song today, and because of the cost and the union structure, for him to sing a song just for the board, just a board meeting, that was going to cost $30,000. That doesn't sound too good. They wanted $30,000 to move a piano. So you can't have that.
That's crazy.
Lee, $30,000 to move a piano. What happened?
Well, I think we could probably move it with 2 or 3, but I know it's a very valuable piano, but that's exorbitant. I don't know what the union rules are and how many men and women it takes, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, that's embarrassing. And I was sitting on the dais only a couple of seats from the president. I really didn't hear exactly what he said. I thought at first he said, I want 30 grand for you to sing. And I'm like, I don't charge money to sing for the president. You could have that for free, but and then I found out later, of course, it was his comment about the union and how much they were charging. I don't know about that fight. You know, he'll have to take them on later and decide what's right and what's wrong. You know, I've been a union member for my entire life, 50 years, and so I can understand they protect their members, but that is a little ridiculous.
Okay, Lee, I want to turn our attention to faith. Now, depending on who you listen to, faith is either on life support here in America or there's a Christian revival spreading throughout the country. Catholic writer Ross Douthat thinks it's the latter, as he says, quote, there is clearly an increased interest in religion, particularly among Generation Z as opposed to previous generations. And last month, around 70 Kentucky University students wrote out all 21 chapters of the Gospel of John on the sidewalk. Their goal, to get more students connected with God. Well, as you tour the country, what's your take on what's happening in America?
Well, as you know, Allison, we have had and have promoted the Bible for an awful long time. This is our version of the Bible, God Bless the USA Bible, if you will, which has the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. And to celebrate Easter, we've actually produced this brand new Bible for those, hey, guys, you need to get this for your wife, this pink version of God Bless USA Bible. It's absolutely fantastic to hold. And I have a feeling that religion is alive and well in the United States of America. There's no doubt in my mind that faith has played a great part in the United States voting in our new president, President Trump. And I have our faith in the president. I have faith in what he's doing, and I have faith in God. So let's just all get behind that.
Lee, you debuted your powerful country rock version of God Bless the USA last year. It climbed to the top of the charts as you became the oldest country artist to score a #1 hit on Billboard. Kudos, first of all, just for scoring #1. I'm not going to bring up the age, but that's what was written in there, so I apologize for bringing up the age. Either way, you get the point. Kudos to you. But talk about kind of how this other version, this newer version, this updated version, how it feels now that it's kind of sank in, and do you have a preference? Do you still like the original, or having updated the song, does that create a different feeling for you, if you will?
Well, you know, I have two young sons. Dalton turns 30 this week. He's a PhD in cancer research from Vanderbilt and immunology. Our younger son's graduating from the University of Miami with his master's in music. So they keep me in tune with what the public likes. And when I told them we're going to do a rock version of USA, they were said, go for it, Dad. We want this. And so it really struck all of the younger generation. There was over 1.5 million views in just a few months that we released it. It did go #1 on the rock charts. And yes, at my old age of 55, it's amazing I could be that old and still be able to release a rock version of God Bless USA. But it may not be my favorite, but I do like it, and I think it really it was fun to do.
I think that's very cool, branching out.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Lee, do you ever think about your legacy? I mean, you're a humble guy, but look, the truth of the matter is you've had forget just the career. I mean, you have quite a life. What do you want that legacy to be? Have you thought about it? Have you contemplated that as you, as you sift through life as you move on?
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because our focus for the past 20 years or so has been building homes for wounded warriors. And it has been something close to my heart. We would love to do. I didn't serve in the military. My father was in the Navy and the Merchant Marine during World War II. My wife's father, Kim's father, was in the Army. And so it's something very close to my heart is to help soldiers. And I'm glad you mentioned it because we even have a new version of the Bible for soldiers. This is the God Bless USA Bible camouflage version, if you believe it.
Wow.
And it has the same things in it, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and those things might be important to a soldier for the things he fought for. So get it from GodBlessUSABible.com, all versions of it. And thank you for asking about my legacy because I get closer and closer to that final reward. I want people to know that I care for this country so very much and that I am a Christian and I believe in what we do.
That's
Absolutely.
great. You put on the full armor of God with that Bible, technically. That's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Allison.
For the ladies, for the military. And I love that it has the Declaration of Independence. And Lee, I don't know if you saw that President Trump put a big Declaration of Independence inside the Oval Office, which is so important to us all.
Absolutely. I carry the Constitution with us as well, and it is in the Bible as well, too. So just kind of as a last thought, a very happy Easter to all of you, and I hope that you get a chance to settle at home with your family and go to church and do the things we know we should do by the rights of God. So pick up one of these, GodBlessUSABible.com, and guys, get one for your wife. She'll love it.
Amen. Beautiful. What a wonderful
Bless
gift.
you, Lee. Bless you, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lee Greenwood. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Allison. Have a happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
I'm ready for my
get the hook. Get the hook.
Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and we are free because of the soldiers.
Beautiful.
Yes,
coming up, tariff hypocrisy. Some well-known Democrats who are the most vocal against Trump's tariffs once encouraged them. In moments, their forgotten statements that prove it. Also, freedom matters no matter your species. In moments, the heartbreaking and heartwarming story about an animal rescue you won't soon forget. American Sunrise will be right back.
Let's spill some tea.
All right, time to spill some tea. Here on Real America's Voice, we are talking about Artillery Tea Company right now. Artillery Tea Company is one of our sponsors here, and they are great. You can use their tea bags twice, and it's a great company. Make sure that you are going to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code REV.
Okay, time now to spill some tea. And in the cup today, hypocrisy. We've been seeing all the recent pushback from Democrats on the Trump administration's sweeping new reciprocal tariff plans. But the left must be forgetting these trade policies are exactly what they advocated for in the recent past. Old videos of former President Barack Obama, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders now resurfacing in light of the left's growing opposition to Trump's tariffs. Is this hypocrisy at its finest? Let's take a look.
It's also proper for advanced economies like the United States to insist on reciprocity from nations like China that are no longer solely poor countries, to make sure that they're providing access to their markets and that they stop taking intellectual property and hacking our servers.
How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit and loss of jobs for the American worker? And how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo?
Further, what they have said is that we need to not worry about manufacturing in America, because what we should establish is a policy of unfettered free trade. We don't need tariffs. What we need is to allow corporate America the freedom to throw American workers out on the street, people who are making 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour, health care, pensions, throw them out on the street, because somehow, Madam President, we are going to create wealth in America and good paying jobs in America as we shut down plants, we move to China, corporations there pay workers 20, 30 cents an hour, and we bring the product back into this country. And anyone who goes shopping in a mall knows how difficult it is today to find the product made in America. But that is the philosophy.
Now, several Democrat senators are now demanding a hearing on Trump's authority to impose these tariffs on more than 180 countries, calling it, quote, an economic chaos. The Trump administration says they have no intention of backing down or delaying the tariffs and are prepared to further retaliate against uncooperative nations. Let's bring in the team right now for more. Okay. Very interesting to see that tape. Specifically, Nancy Pelosi going so hardcore on China. I thought that was fascinating, considering where we are right now.
And what's more fascinating is the rhetoric was right, and President Trump is showing that the rhetoric was right, but the actions didn't follow the rhetoric. They talked a big game, but didn't really do anything about it. And President Trump is the first president in recent memory who's had the kahunas to actually say it and then follow up with some real action, David.
Yeah, I mean, and this is hypocrisy from the left, so it shouldn't shock us, right? My body, my choice on abortion, but all of a sudden, if you want to do my body, my choice on vaccines, no, get the jab and do it now. So, Emily, I mean, this is what we've seen from Democrats for a very long time.
Absolutely. And could you imagine, President Trump, as we talked about with Jen Pellegrino earlier in the show, President Trump keeps saying that we got to hang tight, that it's going to be long-term gain just for a little bit of short-term pain with all of these tariffs that he's been imposing. And could you imagine if these Democrats would have taken some action back in the 90s with Nancy Pelosi specifically, with that clip that we just saw? Seems like it's very overdue at this point.
Good point.
Great point. I mean, they're just flim-flamming all over the place, and Donald Trump has been talking about this for decades. The plan is in action, and he is not backing down. So it is what it is. Hang in there. It's going to be okay. Well, we want to know what you think. Let us know on Rumble or Getter. Hop on and let your voice be heard. Coming up, still to come on American Sunrise, every living creature is precious. In moments, the story of a young bear who is finally free after spending years in cruel captivity. It is both heartbreaking and heartwarming, and it's straight ahead as American Sunrise continues. We will be right back.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Emily Finn. Thanks so much for joining us today. Time now for the sunny side up, and in the pan, a sad story with a happy ending. An adorable brown bear held in awful conditions in a cage for nearly 2 years is finally free from his cruel captivity. A 4-year-old brown bear, like I said, was held there. That was 2 years that he was in these very, very confined conditions. Noah was trapped in a pen with the door welded shut outside of a small business in Armenia. He was kept for entertainment purposes, but just a few weeks ago, Noah was freed with the help of workers from the International Animal Rescue and the Foundation for the Preservation of Wildlife and Cultural Assets. Police and other emergency services helped the workers cut open the door's cages. Take a look.
Noah was trapped behind a car repair shop, crammed into this tiny cage which was barely bigger than his body. The water from his pool would overflow and freeze across the concrete floor, leaving him with nothing but ice to sleep on. His owner thought these conditions were acceptable, even became angry and upset when we came to take Noah away. Noah has been mentally and physically traumatized, and it's going to take him a long time to heal from the evil inflicted upon him.
Wow, thank God Noah is out of those awful, awful conditions. Both of the charities are asking for donations to help care for Noah now while he continues his rehabilitation process at the rescue center. I certainly wish him the best of luck to get back to full health.
Wow, that cage looked absolutely horrible, horrific. So I don't know where he's going to go now, but hopefully he is